I am the captain. You will sit down and obey my orders right now, or I will have you removed from this aircraft.
Captain Richard Hale believed the sky belonged to him. Not just today, not just this flight, but always. 20 years in the cockpit had shaped him into something powerful and something dangerous. He wasn't just a pilot. He was the face of Crown Atlantic Airlines. Silver hair, perfect posture, a voice that could turn turbulence into poetry. But tonight, his confidence was about to betray him. It was a cold, rainy evening inside JFK's Crown Elite Lounge. Passengers were tired, flights were delayed, and Captain Hale was already in a foul mood. He swirled his 18-year scotch and leaned back in his leather chair. "Standards are falling," he muttered. "They'll let anyone into the cockpit these days." His first officer, Ethan Ward, laughed nervously. "Sure, Captain. You'd know better." I'll scan the lounge without interest until the glass doors slid open. A man walked in, tall, calm, dressed in a charcoal three-piece suit that looked carved. Not stitched. A quiet confidence followed him like a shadow. He carried only a worn leather briefcase. No suitcase. No noise. No hesitation. He didn't act like a typical traveler. He acted like a man who had been in 100 rooms like this and never once felt out of place. Captain Hale's eyes narrowed. "Since when do they let everyone in here?" he whispered. Ethan glanced at the man. "He looks important, sir." "Yeah," Hale snorted. "He looks like someone pretending to be important." The man walked to the concierge desk. Mia, the lounge attendant, scanned his black card. Her posture changed instantly. "Oh, good evening, Mr. Harrington. We weren't expecting you. Would you prefer a private suite?" The man, Jamal Harrington, shook his head gently. "No, I'll sit by the window. Just some reading before the flight." His voice was low, measured unbrew. Holly watched with annoyance growing in his chest. Mia had never spoken to him that respectfully. "Look at that," Hale muttered. Acting like royalty, Ethan kept quiet. Hale downed his drink, stood up, and straightened his jacket. "Watch this, kid. This is how you keep standards high." He marched across the lounge. Jamal was already seated, reviewing a thick red-bordered file. He didn't glance up as Hale's shadow fell across the papers. Hale cleared his throat. "You enjoying the lounge?" Jamal finished the line he was reading, calmly set his pen down, and looked up. "It's fine. Thank you." Hale nodded toward the far seating area. "Just so you know, this section is usually for our elite platinum travelers. People with long-term loyalty, not walk-ins." Jamal held his gaze. "Is there a problem with where I'm sitting?" Hale gave a thin smile. "No problem. Just giving you a chance to avoid discomfort later. We keep this section curated." Jamal nodded slowly. "My access is correct." And with that, he returned to his documents. No fear, no apology. No interest in Hale's ego. That dismissal stung more than an insult. Hale returned to Ethan, jaw tight. "I can smell trouble a mile away," he muttered. "If he gives me one excuse, just one, he's off my aircraft." But Hale had no idea. The man he was trying to intimidate wasn't a random traveler. He was Jamal Harrington, the one person in the entire aviation system who could end Captain Hale's career with a single signature, and Hale was about to give him every reason to use that power. The storm worsened inside the cockpit of Crown Atlantic Flight 764. Hale flipped switches aggressively. "Flaps set," Ethan said. "Verified," Hale snapped. "What's the load sheet?" Ethan read from the tablet. "Full economy. 5 open in business. First class is full." Captain, we also received a VIP note." "Let me see." Ethan handed him the tablet. A name was highlighted. "Harrington Jamal, seat 1A. Priority do not disturb," Hale scoffed. "Priority? We'll see about that." He unbuckled. "Captain," Ethan whispered. "Push back in 10 minutes. We push when I say," Hale growled. "I'm checking something." He stepped out into the first-class cabin. Soft lighting. A calm hum of passengers settling in, and there he was. Seat 1A. Front row. Prime real estate. Jamal Harrington. Still reading. Still calm. Still absolutely unbothered. Hall approached with a practiced smile. "Mr. Harrington," he said loudly, "enjoying the front of the plane?" Jamal looked up politely. "It's fine. Thank you, Captain." Hale leaned forward, hand resting on the overhead bin. "You see, Seat 1A is usually reserved for our most loyal flyers. People who have contributed a lot to this airline. VIPs, senators, major donors." Jamal's eyebrows lifted slightly. "Is there a problem with my ticket?" "No ticket problem," Hal said, lowering his voice. "It's more of a cultural fit issue. We have a very important passenger in row 4. Someone who might feel uncomfortable." The cabin fell silent. Everyone was listening. Hallie continued anyway. "You might be more comfortable in Premium Plus. It's more your speed." The words landed like a slap, not loud, but sharp, intentional, ugly. Jamal slowly unbuckled his belt and stood. He matched Hale's height easily. "Captain Hale," he said, voice steady. "Are you formally telling me to leave my assigned seat based purely on your personal judgment?" "I'm giving you a choice," Hale replied. "Move to row 12. Or get off my aircraft." "A threat?" Jamal asked. "For reading quietly?" "You were aggressive in the lounge," Hal lied. "You're being difficult now. Under federal rules, if I think you're a problem, I don't have to fly with you." The lead flight attendant tried to speak, but Hala cut her off with a glare. Jamal looked around the cabin. Passengers watched with wide eyes. Some confused, some angry. Then he looked back at Hale. "I will step off," Jamal said softly. "But before I go, you should hear this." He picked up his briefcase, slid the red-bordered file inside, straightened his jacket. "The moment I walk off this aircraft, this flight is not leaving the ground." Haley laughed loudly. "You're shutting down JFK? All by yourself?" Jamal didn't flinch. "Enjoy tonight in your uniform, Captain," he said. "You won't get many more." He stepped out of the aircraft, and with him walked Captain Hale's entire career. The ground that opened under Captain Hale's feet the moment Jamal Harrington stepped off the aircraft. A strange silence settled inside Crown Atlantic Flight 764. Captain Richard Hale stood in the aisle, chest puffed with victory. He believed he had just protected his cabin. He believed he had removed a threat. He believed he had done the right thing. But the cabin around him didn't agree. No applause. No nods of approval. Not even a polite smile. Just the stiff, uncomfortable stillness of passengers who had witnessed something wrong and knew the captain was the cause. Hale forced a grin. "No worries, folks," he announced loudly. "Just taking care of safety. You're in good hands." The words felt cheap even to him. He turned and walked back to the cockpit, slamming the door behind him. Inside, First Officer Ethan Ward sat frozen. His hands hovered over the flight tablet. His face pale. "He's gone," Hale declared. "Call for pushback." But Ethan didn't move, Captain. He whispered, something trembling in his voice. "We have messages. Messages." Hale frowned. "From who?" Ethan swallowed hard. "From Tower. From dispatch. From corporate. And from the FAA office?" Hale waved a hand dismissively. "They can wait." "No, sir," Ethan said, shaking his head. "They can't." He turned the tablet toward Hale. A bright red notification glowed across the screen. "Pushback denied, hold position, FAA order." Hale blinked. FAA. Why? "Weather's fine for departure." Ethan pressed his lips together. "It's not weather, sir." At that moment, the cockpit printer jolted to life. A rapid series of clicks and whirs filled the small space as the machine spat out a long strip of paper. Ethan reached for it, but his hand stopped midair. His breath caught. "Oh my God," he whispered. "What now?" Hale snapped. Ethan handed him the paper. Hale's eyes scanned the words. At first slowly, then faster. Then his heartbeat changed rhythm entirely. FROM. Federal Aviation Administration. Office of the Administrator Subject. Immediate. A grounding order, Captain Richard Hale. Reason. Captain Hale removed a federal officer from the aircraft without cause. Remove passenger. Director Jamal Harrington, FAA Regional Administrator and Chief of Aviation Compliance. Captain Hale's license and command authority are suspended pending investigation. Flight 764 is grounded until further notice. The paper slipped from Hale's fingers. He sat back down in his seat, like someone had cut his strings. Director Harrington. He whispered, "That man? That man." "Yes," Ethan said quietly. "You kicked out the person who supervises airline operations, the man who signs off on certifications, the man who controls aviation compliance for half the country?" Hale shook his head rapidly. He didn't identify himself. He didn't say anything. Ethan didn't blink. "He tried, sir. In the lounge, and again on the aircraft. You didn't let him speak." Suddenly the radio crackled. "Kennedy Tower to Crown 764. Shut down engines immediately. Repeat. Shut down engines. Hold position. Do not move." Hale grabbed the transmitter. "Tower. This is Captain Hale. We're awaiting clearance." The tower cut him off. "Negative 764. Do not move. Port Authority and FAA officials are en route to your cockpit. Remain inside. Do not attempt to depart." Hale felt his hands shaking. This wasn't a delay. This was a prosecution. A heavy knock pounded on the cockpit door. Ethan jumped. Hale stared at the door, throat dry. "Captain Hale," a muffled voice called. "This is Port Authority. Open the door." Ethan looked at Hale helplessly. "Sir, you need to open it." Hal moved like a man underwater, slow, heavy, disbelieving. He unlocked the cockpit door. 2 officers stood there. Behind them, an NTSB investigator. Their expressions were rigid, cold, formal. Captain Hale, the lead officer, said, "Step out of the seat. You are required to come with us." Halley stood shakily. "This is a misunderstanding," he insisted. "I demand a union representative." "I demand the chief pilot. You can make your calls at the station," the officer interrupted. "Please step out of the cockpit." The officer didn't call him captain. He called him sir. The tone stung. Hale reached for his blazer. "Leave it," the officer said. Hale snapped. "It's my uniform." The NTSB investigator checked his watch. "Take it," he said impatiently. "We need to move."
"Your aircraft is blocking traffic." Hal put on the blazer with trembling hands.
His stripes, the same stripes he once wore with pride, felt heavier than ever. He stepped into the galley. Flight attendant Mira, normally warm and cheerful, didn't meet his eyes. She looked hurt, disappointed. "Captain," she whispered. He wasn't doing anything. He was just reading. Hallie swallowed hard. The officers escorted him through first class. The walk felt endless. Passengers watched silently. The man in seat. Tooby shook his head slowly as Hallie passed. Not angry. Just disappointed. A woman in 3A recorded him with her phone. "He's the one," she whispered to her live stream. "That's the pilot who kicked off an FAA director." Hale felt sick. Whispers followed him like smoke. "Is that him?" "That's the racist pilot. He's finished." When he stepped onto the jet bridge, the air felt colder, thinner. Waiting at the end of the bridge were Crown Atlantic station manager, 2 corporate supervisors, and 1 man with an umbrella, Jamal Harrington, standing tall, now completely composed. He looked at Hale not with anger, but with the quiet, devastating disappointment of a man used to dealing with people who abuse power. The station manager stepped forward, voice cracking. "Captain Hale, hand over your ID badge. Your airport access is revoked." Hall shook his head. "Bob, wait, you can't suspend me here. There's a process." Jamal finally spoke. "There is a process," he said. "And it starts now." Hale's voice broke. "I didn't know who you were." Jamal stepped closer. His presence felt enormous. "That," he said softly, "is the problem." He didn't raise his voice. He didn't insult. He didn't threaten. He simply spoke the truth. You treated me like a problem because you thought I was nobody. If I were a janitor, a doctor, a student, you would have done the same. Hale's eyes filled with panic. I was trying to protect the flight. No, Jamal cut in. You were protecting your ego. The officers took Hale by the arms. His uniform suddenly felt like a costume. Jamal lifted the red-bordered file. This, he said, is Crown Atlantic's Culture and Conduct Audit. I was flying to meet your CEO. I wanted to observe the airline. Anonymously, Jamal paused. You delivered your evaluation before we even left the gate. The officers began leading Hale away. Wait, Hale shouted. My pension, my career. You can't destroy 20 years for one mistake. Jamal didn't move. He didn't flinch. He simply spoke the sentence that ended. Richard Hale's life in the sky. It wasn't a mistake, Captain. It was a choice. And now the consequences have finally caught up. As Hale was escorted into the terminal's administrative wing, cameras flashed, passengers whispered, and Crown Atlantic Flight 764 remained frozen on the ground. The fall of Captain Richard Hale had just begun. The captain in the glass box, Captain Richard Hale, had walked through airports thousands of times. Always confident, always admired, always in control. But today, as Port Authority officers escorted him through JFK Terminal 4, he wasn't a captain. He wasn't admired. He wasn't in control. He was a spectacle, a scandal, a headline in the making. They led him through a back hallway and into the airport administration wing, a place he had only heard about in whispered stories. This was where pilots were disciplined, where licenses were questioned, where careers quietly died. The officers stopped in front of a small conference room. 3 walls were glass. Anyone walking past could see inside. It was known among crews as the fishbowl. Sit, the officer ordered. Hale sat. His hands shook. His uniform collar suddenly felt too tight. The officers left, closing the glass door behind them. Hale was alone, and for the first time in years, he felt fear. He stared at the empty hallway outside the glass. People walked by. Some glanced at him. Some whispered. Some took pictures. He wasn't used to being looked at this way. Like a warning. Like a fallen figure. Like someone who had crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. Minutes crawled into an hour. No one came. He sat in silence with his thoughts. Thoughts he didn't want, but couldn't escape. What have I done? He didn't say who he was. He should have told me. No, he tried. I didn't listen. Why didn't I listen? Every excuse he tried to create collapsed under the weight of the truth. A man behaved. Quietly, professionally, peacefully, and Hell treated him like an intruder. Footsteps approached. The door opened. In walked Captain Morgan Price, Crown Atlantic's chief pilot and one of the few people Hale considered a friend. But today, Morgan didn't look like a friend. He looked like someone forced to perform an execution. He didn't shake Hale's hand. He didn't even offer a nod. He closed the door behind him. Richard, he said quietly. We need to talk. Hallie stood slightly. Morgan, thank God you're here. You have to tell them Jamal was being difficult. He was disrespectful. Morgan raised a hand. Stop. Hale froze. Morgan placed a folder on the table. Thick, heavy. Official. I watched the CCTV footage, Morgan said. From the lounge. I listened to the audio from your cockpit prep, and I read the passenger statements. His voice hardened. Do not lie to me, Hallie swallowed. I wasn't lying. You called him wrong fit. You told Ethan he looked like trouble. You implied he didn't belong because of how he looked, Richard? Hale's jaw tightened. I was protecting the standard? No, Morgan snapped. You were protecting your bias. Hale felt his face flush with shame and anger. Morgan, you know me. I've flown with you for years. I'm not a racist. Morgan sighed heavily. Richard, you don't have to say racist words to behave in racist ways. This wasn't the first time. Holly blinked hard. What are you talking about? Morgan opened the folder, pulled out multiple printed reports. 7 prior complaints, he said. All from minority passengers removed from your flights. A Sikh doctor, a young Latino couple. Black students headed to a convention. All reported as security risks. Hale's stomach twisted. Were risks, he insisted weakly. No, Morgan said firmly. Security reviewed every case. None of them were threats. But every time. You insisted. Silence. Thick. Suffocating. Hale felt like he was drowning in it. Morgan sat down across from him. You didn't just embarrass yourself today, he said. You embarrassed Crown Atlantic, you embarrassed the profession, and you lost the trust of the federal office that decides our fate. Hale leaned back, eyes wide with denial and fear. You can't fire me over this. There's a process. I have seniority. I have rights. Morgan's expression turned cold. Richard, you kicked the FAA Director of Aviation Compliance off an aircraft. On video, in front of witnesses. On a flight you were captain of... He slid a paper across the table. This is a suspension notice. You are removed from active flight duty effective. Immediately. Your license is under FAA review. LA stared at the paper as if it were a death certificate. My license? He whispered, no. No, they can't take my license. That's my life.
Morgan didn't blink.
They can take it. And they will. A knock at the door. Not an officer, not a lawyer, not a representative from Crown. It's Atlantic. It was Jamal Harrington. Hale's breath caught. The door opened, and Jamal stepped inside. No security. No entourage. No aggression. Just calm authority. Morgan stood. Director Harrington, he said respectfully. Jamal nodded. I'd like a minute with Captain Hale. Morgan hesitated, but he stepped out quietly. The door closed. Hale suddenly felt smaller than he had ever felt in his entire life. Jamal took the chair across from him, placed his briefcase gently on the table, folded his hands. He didn't look angry. That made it worse. Captain Hale, Jamal began. I didn't come here to punish you personally. I don't enjoy seeing anyone lose their career. But I do need to ask you one honest question. Hay looked up slowly. Jamal's eyes were steady, searching, unshakable. In the lounge, Jamal said softly, before you knew my name, before I spoke a word, what was the first thought you had when you saw me? Hale opened his mouth. A lie formed, then died. He didn't have the energy to lie anymore. His voice cracked. I thought... He looked down. He couldn't meet Jamal's eyes. I thought you didn't belong. Jamal nodded slowly. Because of my race? Hale hesitated, then nodded. Yes. Jamal stood quietly, not triumphant, not smug, just sad. Thank you for the truth, he said. It doesn't change the consequences, but it matters to hear it. Hale's eyes burned. What happens to me now? He whispered. Jamal picked up his briefcase. Now, he said gently, you experience what it feels like to have power taken away from you. He reached the door, paused, and maybe. You learn who you are without a uniform. Then he left. Hale sat alone in the glass box, a man whose world had shattered in under 3 hours. His wings were gone. His reputation destroyed. His future uncertain, and the consequences were only beginning. The fall of a captain, and the rise of the internet captain, Richard. Hale left the glass room of the administration wing like a man walking out of a wrecked aircraft, not dead, but barely alive inside. Port Authority officers didn't handcuff him. They didn't need to. The humiliation itself was a punishment far greater than restraints. They escorted him through a restricted corridor and out into the main terminal, toward the public exit. The moment he stepped into the open, the world pounced. It started with a whisper. That's him. Is that the pilot? Oh my God, it is. And the whispers turned into phones. Phones turned into cameras. Cameras turned into flashes. And flashes turned into chaos. A reporter shoved a mic toward him. Captain Hale. Did you really kick off the FAA director? Another voice yelled, Do you regret your actions? A third, would you have done it if he was white? Hale flinched. He tried to shield his face, but there was nowhere to hide. The same terminal he once walked through with pride, uniform crisp, hat shining now, swallowed him whole. Camera caught him looking panicked, clicked another. Captured his trembling hands, click, one. Photographer climbed a bench to get a better angle, click. The flashes were relentless, cold, hungry. Halley stumbled toward the taxi lane. A reporter chased him. Captain, the airline released a statement. They're distancing themselves from you. What do you say? Halley snapped, I have no comment. The crowd gasped. Cameras exploded with light. That one moment, that single outburst, would become the thumbnail of dozens of viral videos. Within hours, he spotted a cab and practically dove into the back seat. Just drive, he muttered. Anywhere go. The cab driver, quiet man wearing a turban, glanced at him through the mirror. Recognized him, said nothing, turned the radio up. The news was already running the story. Breaking, Crown Atlantic pilot removed after conflict with FAA director. Social media outrage. Hashtag Groundhail now hits 2 million tweets. FAA confirms investigation into Captain Hale after passenger removal. Hale shut his eyes. He felt the world collapsing in real time. He wasn't just a man in a scandal. He was the scandal. The cab reached his home in suburban Connecticut, a large colonial house with perfect lawns and a driveway he once felt proud of. It didn't feel proud anymore. It felt like a museum of a life he no longer owned. He walked inside. Linda, he called. His wife didn't answer. He found her sitting at the kitchen island, a glass of wine in her hand, her tablet on the counter. She wasn't crying. She was numb. Honey, Hale said softly. It's blown out of proportion. I can fix this. I'll talk to the union. Linda rotated the tablet toward. He paused on a video. The video, the moment Hale pointed at the door and ordered Jamal Harrington off the plane. She had watched it over and over. Richard, she whispered, what did you do? They edited it, Hola said quickly. They twisted the story. You know how the internet is? Stop. Her voice cut like glass. Don't you dare lie to me. Not now. She stood from the stool. Her hands shook. Her breathing uneven. I heard your voice. I heard what you said. This isn't some misunderstanding, Richard. This is who you've been becoming for years. Let's step forward. Linda, please. But she stepped back. You've joked like this at dinners. You've complained about standards. You've talked about who belongs where and who doesn't. She blinked fast, trying not to cry. I thought it was harmless. I thought it was just talk. But today, you ruined everything. He tried again. We'll keep the house. No, we won't, she cut in. Your pay is suspended. Your benefits, your pension, all tied to your standing. She gestured around the kitchen. This house, these cars, our daughter's school, this life depends on your job. Her voice cracked. And you destroyed it in one flight. Hale's knees weakened. Linda, don't leave me. Don't do this. I just need time. I'm done giving you time, she whispered. She brushed past him, walked upstairs. Closed the door. Hale remained in the kitchen, surrounded by the silence of a collapsing marriage. 3 months passed. The public disaster became a legal disaster. Today was the FAA hearing. The room was cold, sterile, gray. Hale was thinner, eyes sunken, suit oversized, hair messy. He sat beside his lawyer, a man who cost more per hour than Hale made per flight. Across the room sat 3 federal judges, and director JamalHarrington.com, as ever. The hearing began. The judges reviewed cockpit audio, CCTV footage, passenger testimonies, crew statements, 7 prior complaints. Hale's lawyer tried to defend him. My client acted under perceived security concerns. Perceived by who? The judge interrupted. No one else, including crew, observed any threat. His lawyer changed tactics. It was a tense day. Fatigue may have another judge cut in. Captain Hale is required to demonstrate good judgment at all times. Fatigue is not an excuse for discrimination. For 2 hours, they dissected Hale's career with surgical brutality. Then they called the final witness. Director Harrington Jamal stood, approached the microphone. His calm presence filled the room. Security, he began slowly, is the foundation of aviation. We give captains authority. Because we expect fairness, we give them trust. Because we expect wisdom, we give them power. Because we expect responsibility, he paused. Captain Hale violated all three. Hale closed his eyes. Jamal continued. A captain removed me, not because of conduct, but because of appearance. A captain used federal rules like weapons to mask personal prejudice. And a captain threatened to derail a flight for reasons unrelated to safety. The judges nodded. Quiet, serious then. One of them spoke. Mr. Harrington, do you recommend revocation of his license? Jamal didn't hesitate. Yes. Hale's stomach dropped. Jamal added, but not because of who I am, because of who he chose to be. The judges whispered for barely a minute, then delivered the sentence. Captain Richard Hale, the lead judge, said, your airline transport pilot certificate is revoked permanently. You are disqualified from holding any airman certificate in the United States. Hale's heart stopped. No. No, please. His voice cracked into a sob. You can't do this. Flying is all I have. Please, the judge closed the file. This hearing is adjourned. Hale collapsed into his chair. Everything he had ever worked for was gone, not suspended, not paused. Gone. He looked up at Jamal. But Jamal had already closed his briefcase and walked out of the room without looking back. And that was somehow worse than anger or shouting or revenge. It was silence. Final, complete, absolute. Grounded. For life, the hearing was over. The judges were gone. The room was empty, but Captain Richard Hale stayed frozen in his chair long after everyone left, as if getting up would make the verdict more real. Permanent revocation. Not suspension. Not retraining. Not probation. Permanent. A word that hit harder than any turbulence he had ever felt. He tried to breathe, but the air felt thick, heavy, hostile. He wasn't Captain Hale anymore. Just Richard. Just another man who made a bad choice and finally paid for it. He slowly stood, legs trembling beneath him. The expensive suit he wore no longer felt like clothing. It felt like a costume from a life he no longer deserved. He walked outside the hearing room. A janitor-ran older black man was mopping the floor. He paused when Hallie passed. Looked him up and down. Recognized him. Then the janitor shook his head slowly. Not in anger. Not in spite, but in disappointment. The same kind of disappointment Hala had seen in the eyes of passengers. Crew, his own wife. He kept walking. Outside. The November air cut through his suit like knives. Cold, bitter, unforgiving. Just
Out.
like today, he sat on a low concrete wall near the parking lot. His hands shook so badly, he dropped his car keys twice. He stared at the sky. Planes roared overhead, descended, departed, climbed into the clouds, the sound used to comfort him, used to thrill him. But today, each passing jet felt like a reminder of where he would never be again. A week later, Hale sat at his kitchen table. Papers spread everywhere. Bills, legal notices, letters from Crown Atlantic. Letters from the FAA, letters from his mortgage company. He rubbed his face with both hands. The numbers didn't lie. He couldn't keep the house. He couldn't keep up with expenses. He couldn't afford his daughter's school. He couldn't afford much of anything anymore. His wife Linda walked into the room. She didn't sit. She didn't smile. We need to talk, she said quietly. Hale felt the familiar dread rise in his chest. I filed for divorce. The words were soft, gentle, They hit like a crash. I stood by you for 20 years, she said. I made excuses for your temper. I ignored your comments. I defended you when others complained. Her eyes welled with tears. But this time, you weren't just cruel. You were exposed. Hale reached for her hand, desperate. Linda, please. I can fix it. You can't fix what was broken long before this happened. She whispered. She pulled her hand away. I'm leaving next week. Then she turned and walked out of the kitchen. Out of the marriage. Out of the life they built. The door closed softly behind her. Hale sat there alone, surrounded by papers and the ruins of a career that once made him feel invincible. 2 months passed. The move was brutal, embarrassing, humbling. He went from a 4-bedroom colonial to a small apartment in Queens. The walls were thin. The neighbors were loud. The carpet smelled like old smoke. The windows rattled when buses drove by. But he had nowhere else to go. His savings drained fast. His legal bills were massive. His pension gone. His benefits gone. His reputation shattered. He needed work. Any work. But the aviation world. It was closed to him forever. He applied everywhere. Retail stores. Delivery companies. Dispatch offices. Car rentals. No one wanted a disgraced pilot. Finally, a job came through. Shuttle driver. Minimum wage. No benefits. Bad hours. Cheap yellow uniform. But Hale didn't say no. He couldn't, and so. On a cold, rainy morning, almost 1 year after the incident, Richard Hale sat behind the wheel of a Park and Save airport shuttle bus. He adjusted the cracked mirror, turned the squeaky steering wheel, pulled into Terminal 4th, the same terminal he once walked through with pride. Passengers boarded without looking at him. Some shoved luggage at him. Some barked orders. Some didn't say thank you. Once, he would have thrown these people off his aircraft. Now, he swallowed every insult. He needed the job. He needed the money. He needed anything. A man at the back yelled, "Driver, can you move it? I'm gonna miss my flight." Hal forced a polite tone. "Yes, sir. Traffic's tight today." "Well, then drive around it." The man snapped. "Or, do you not know how to drive?" Hall gripped the wheel. Once upon a time, he commanded a $90 million aircraft. Now he couldn't even command respect. He muttered quietly, "Have a safe flight, sir." But the man was already gone. Hale stepped out of the bus into the cold, ready to unload luggage for the next passenger as he lifted a heavy suitcase. He glanced toward the first-class entrance of Terminal 4. A group of flight crew walked out chatting, laughing, uniforms crisp leading them. Was Ethan Ward, the same first officer who once trembled under Hale's authority. Now wearing the 4 stripes of a captain, Hale froze. Heart aching, Ethan looked confident, relaxed, respected. He had become everything. Hale used to be as Ethan walked past the shuttle. Their eyes met for a brief second. Hale hoped, prayed for even the smallest nod of recognition. But Ethan didn't smile, didn't wave, didn't acknowledge him. He looked right through Hale, as if Hale were just another nameless airport worker, another nobody. Hale's throat tightened. He looked away quickly. Just then, a sleek black town car pulled up near the terminal doors. A driver hurried out with an umbrella. The back door opened. A tall man stepped out. Charcoal suit, calm posture, leather briefcase in hand. Jamal Harrington. Hale froze. For a moment, the sound of rain faded. The airport noise blurred. The world slowed. He watched as Jamal greeted a young pilot, smiling. Encouraging, respectful. Jamal treated that young man with more dignity than Hal had treated him in the lounge that day. Hale's chest tightened painfully. This was the difference. Hale had used authority to push others down. Jamal used authority to lift others up, as Jamal turned toward the terminal doors. Hale ducked his head, ashamed to be seen. But Jamal didn't look his way, not out of cruelty, out of irrelevance. Hale was no longer a threat. Not a captain. Not a decision-maker. Not someone who could harm anyone. He was just a shuttle driver in the rain. Passenger knocked hard on the bus door. "Hey, driver. You leaving or what?" "I'm freezing out here." Holy blinked. The moment with Jamal faded. He climbed back into the driver's seat. He put the shuttle in gear. "Yeah," he whispered, voice breaking. "We're going." He drove away from the terminal, away from the world he once ruled, away from the man he used to be. And for the first time in his life, Richard Hale understood something. Respect isn't given by a uniform. Authority isn't earned by years. Power isn't real if it depends on pushing others down. Once he flew above the clouds now, he was learning how to live beneath them. A life below the clouds. The rain poured harder as Richard Hale drove away from Terminal 4. He gripped the shuttle wheel tightly, knuckles pale under the dim dashboard lights. He had spent decades above the clouds gliding, soaring, commanding, but now he drove on the ground, in traffic, in the rain, invisible. The shuttle bus heater rattled. The windshield wipers squeaked. The engine groaned with every climb up the parking ramp. This wasn't a cockpit. This wasn't power. This wasn't glory, it was survival. Barely Hale parked near the employee lot. Shift over. Knees aching. Shoulders heavy. He stepped out of the bus, rain hitting his cheap yellow uniform. Soaking through it instantly, he missed the old uniform, the tailored navy jacket, the gold stripes, the wings on his chest, even the hat. The stupid hat he once hated wearing. He missed all of it. He walked toward his small apartment nearby, a place too cramped to hold his memories and too quiet to hold his regrets. Inside, he dropped his keys on the counter. They clattered louder than expected, another reminder of how empty the apartment was. He opened the fridge. Half a sandwich. Old takeout. Nothing else. He closed it, sat down, and the silence swallowed him. Whole, he stared at the wall, then at the floored, then at his phone. The notifications were still coming. Tweets, posts, videos, mockery, anger, debates about him. #ground Hale now. #Captain Hill incident. #FAA justice. He clicked one out of morbid curiosity. A commentary video played, a YouTuber with a dramatic tone. Captain Richard Hale used his authority to humiliate a federal official. This wasn't a mistake. This was a pattern. Millions of views. He clicked another. Former airline captain loses license permanently. A hard lesson on prejudice. Hundreds of thousands of likes. Another video, a young black woman spoke calmly. "My father was kicked off a flight once for no reason. Now a pilot finally lost his job for doing that? This isn't revenge. This is accountability." Hale's chest tightened. He turned off the phone. Threw it on the couch. But the videos kept going in his head. His daughter called that evening. He stared at the screen for a long moment before picking up. "Dad." Her voice was soft, worried. "Hi, sweetheart," Mom told me. "Everything," he swallowed. "Yeah, it's been tough." A long silence. "Dad, why did you do it?" Hole closed his eyes. The question was a dagger. "I made a bad judgment call," he whispered. "I thought I was doing the right thing, but you weren't," she said gently. "Right?" Hale felt tears burning at the corners of his eyes. "No," he whispered. "I wasn't." "I love you," she said, "but I'm disappointed, Dad." Those words from her cut deeper than anything else. "I know," he said, voice cracking. "And I'm sorry." She didn't reply right away. "Then I hope you learned something from this." "I really do." The line ended. Hale stared at his reflection in the dark phone screen. He didn't see a captain. He didn't see a leader. He saw a man whose pride had cost him everything. The next day at work, Hall climbed into the shuttle bus again. Another shift. Another day of pretending not to break inside. Passengers came and went. Some rude, some kind. Most indifferent. Around noon, a woman in her late 60s boarded. Gray hair, warm smile. A simple carry-on bag. When she stepped up, she paused. "Driver, are you Richard Hale?" He froze, yes. She looked at him carefully. Not judging. Not angry. Just human. I used to fly on your routes, she said. You were my captain once. Hale's heart dropped. I remember your voice on the PA systems. You always sounded so confident. So reassuring. He swallowed hard. She continued softly. I saw the news, Richard. I don't know the whole story, but I hope. Whatever happened, you find a way forward. Her words were simple, but they hit him harder than the online outrage. Not forgiveness, not condemnation, just humanity. Thank you, Lily whispered. She sat Hale blink through tears he didn't want anyone to see. Later that afternoon, during a break, Hale sat on a bench outside Terminal 4. Rain clouds lingering. Cold wind blowing, he watched the planes take off, each one lifting smoothly, climbing into the sky. The sky he used to own. He missed it so much it physically hurt. But he also knew something now, something he had never faced before. Maybe he didn't deserve it anymore. A young man sat beside him suddenly. Airport employee badge. Ground crew uniform. Hey, the guy said timidly. You're Richard Hale, right? Hale braced himself. Yes, the young man nodded slowly. I watched your hearing, he said. I watched all of it. Hale tensed. And I'm not here to judge you. Hale looked at him in surprise. The young man took a breath. I'm here because I wanted to tell you something my dad once told me. Hale raised an eyebrow. What's that? The young man replied softly. When pride shouts, you can't learn. But when pride breaks, you get a chance at becoming someone better. Holly stared at him. The young man stood up, giving a small nod. Good luck, he said, then walked away. Hale sat frozen. Those words echoed louder than the roar of engines, and for the first time, since everything happened, he wondered if this fall wasn't just punishment. Maybe, just maybe, it was a chance to rebuild. That night, Hale looked at himself in the bathroom mirror. No uniform, no wings, no authority. Just a man with scars no one could see, and regrets too. It's heavy for one lifetime. He whispered to his reflection, I don't want to be the man I was. The mirror didn't answer. But for the first time, Richard Hale didn't look away. The man who finally looked down months passed, and while the world forgot the headline, Richard Hale could not forget the man he used to be. Every morning he put on the same yellow shuttle uniform. Every morning he drove the same old bus. Every morning he watched planes rise into the sky like reminders of a home he could never return to. But slowly, quietly, something had changed inside him. The anger had faded. The excuses had died. The denial had cracked apart. And once all the noise fell away, he was left with something he hadn't felt in years. Honesty. Painful, unfiltered honesty. About the ego he built. About the biases he carried. About the people he judged. About the years he spent believing he was above others simply because he sat above them literally at 35,000 feet. He wasn't proud of that man, and for the first time, he wanted to become someone better. One afternoon, Hale walked into the small break room near the shuttle depot. A group of ground crew workers were sitting around a table laughing, eating, sharing stories. They were from everywhere: India, Nigeria, Puerto Rico, Mexico, Jamaica, Pakistan. Hale hesitated at the door. He had never really joined them before, not because he thought he was better, but because he didn't think he belonged. He finally stepped inside. The group quieted. Slightly a tall Nigerian man named Uch offered a deep smile. Richard, sit, eat. Hale sat down slowly. Someone slid a container toward him. Rice, chicken, A. Smell rich with spices he didn't recognize? You try, said A smiling woman in a hijab named Aisha. It's homemade. Hole blinked. You're sharing with me? She raised an eyebrow. Of course. Why wouldn't we? He swallowed. No reason. He didn't finish, because the real reason was painful to admit. Because for years, he was the kind of man who wouldn't have shared with them. But today, he took the fork and tasted the food. The whole table watched his reaction. He smiled genuinely. That's incredible. The table erupted into laughter and happiness, and something inside Hale loosened. Something heavy. Something dark. He didn't know it yet. But this moment was the beginning of his transformation. As weeks went by, Hal found himself talking more with the ground crew, listening, asking questions, learning about their cultures, their languages, their struggles, their dreams. He learned more about humanity in those break rooms than he ever learned in first-class lounges. One day, asked him a question. "You were pilot?" "Yes." Hale nodded softly. "Once. What happened?" Hale hesitated. He could lie. He could dodge the truth. But that was the old Hale, the new one. Wanted to own his story. "I treated someone unfairly," he said quietly. "I judged him because of how he looked. I thought my uniform made me better." The room fell silent. Aisha looked at him gently. "And what did it cost you?" "Everything." The group exchanged glances, not in mockery, not in celebration. In understanding, Yuche nodded slowly. Then maybe he said softly, "It's time to earn something back." A few days later, something unexpected happened. A shuttle driver didn't show up. A large elderly group was waiting with heavy luggage. Another group arrived early. Confusion everywhere, supervisors yelling, passengers frustrated. Hale stepped forward. "Let me help," he said. "Richard, you're off shift," the supervisor replied. "I can still help." He grabbed carts, loaded bags, escorted passengers, gave directions, handled complaints with patience, not pride. Not authority, just kindness. By the time the chaos settled, the supervisor approached him. "You didn't have to do that, I know. You're different than people say." Hale smiled sadly. "I'm trying to be." Meanwhile, news about him had faded. No more trending hashtags. No more debates. No more viral videos. The world had moved on. But Hale didn't want the world back. He wanted himself back. The version he wished he had been. One evening, after a long shift, Hale walked through the terminal to grab a coffee. He stepped onto the escalator and froze. At the top of the escalator stood a man in a charcoal suit, tall, calm. A leather briefcase in hand. Jamal Harrington, the man whose quiet dignity had exposed Hale's loud arrogance, the man whose power had ended his career, and whose character had revealed Hale's flaws. Jamal didn't see him, yet Hale's heart pounded. Pain, guilt, shame, all flooding back at once. He could have turned away, could have hidden, could have pretended, didn't see him. But the man he used to be would have run. The man he was becoming walked forward. Jamal turned. Their eyes met. For a moment, neither spoke. Jamal blinked in recognition. Then he exhaled slowly. "Hale, Director Harrington." A brief pause. "Just Richard," Hale corrected quietly. Jamal studied him, not the uniform. Not the job, but the man. "You look different," Jamal said cautiously. "I am," Hale replied. "At least, I'm trying to be." Jamal nodded slowly. "That's good to hear." Ole took a breath. "I owe you an apology," he said softly. "A real one. Not for the cameras. Not for the hearing. But for the harm I caused. For the judgment. For the disrespect. For thinking I was above you. Above anyone." He swallowed. "The truth is, I wasn't a good captain. I wasn't even a good man." Jamal didn't speak. He let the words settle. Hala continued. "You didn't just end my career. You saved my life from becoming worse than it already was. If you hadn't stopped me, I would have kept hurting people. I would have kept becoming someone I didn't recognize." His voice cracked. "So, thank you." The terminal noise seemed to fade. Jamal looked at him for a long moment, not with anger, with something Hale didn't expect. "Respect, double quotes Richard." Jamal said quietly. "It takes strength to admit what you just said." Another pause. and it takes a different kind of strength to become the man you wish you had been. Hale nodded, eyes burning. Jamal shifted his briefcase. I hope you continue that path. Hale whispered. Jamal extended his hand, a gesture Hale did not expect. Hale took it, and in that moment, not forgiveness, not friendship, but something even more powerful happened. Acknowledgement. Two men stood there, one who had fallen, one who had been wronged, and yet both choosing dignity, both choosing humanity, both choosing to move forward. Jamal released his hand. Take care of yourself, Richard, you two. Director. Jamal walked toward his gate. Hale watched him disappear into the crowd. This time, he didn't feel anger or defeat. He felt hope, a small flame, a quiet spark. A chance as Hale stepped back into the evening air outside the terminal, looked up at the sky. A plane soared overhead. He didn't feel bitterness anymore. He felt peace. The sky wasn't his anymore, but the ground. The place he once ignored was where he had finally learned to be human, and maybe, just maybe, that was a better place to start again. The sky he no longer needed after the unexpected meeting with Jamal Harrington. Richard Hale walked through Terminal 4, feeling something he hadn't felt in a very long time. Lightness. Not because his past was erased, not because his mistakes were fixed, but because for the first time he understood them, and understanding them was the only way he could ever move forward. He stepped outside the terminal, shuttle keys in hand, and breathed in the crisp evening air. Rain had finally stopped. The clouds were thinning. A soft orange sunset bled across the horizon. He hadn't noticed a sunset in months, maybe because he hadn't been looking up as he walked toward the shuttle depot. A young woman in a Crown Atlantic blazer approached him. Excuse me, she said politely. Are you Richard Hale? Hale stiffened. That question usually meant trouble. Yes, he answered cautiously. How can I help you? She offered a small smile. My name is Emily Rivera, she said. I'm a trainee first officer. I heard a lot about you growing up. Hale blinked. You heard about me? Emily nodded. My dad was a ground technician. He worked at Crown for 30 years. He used to talk about the captains who treated the crew with respect. Said you were one of the good ones. Back then? Hale swallowed. Back then? The phrase hit harder than expected. Emily continued. He told me once. There's a pilot named Hale. He flies smooth, speaks calm, and never forgets the humans behind the uniforms. Hale's throat tightened. He had forgotten those humans, but once. He hadn't. Miss Rivera, he said quietly, I haven't been that man for a while. Emily smiled gently. Maybe not. But maybe you're becoming him again. The words lingered. She looked at her watch. I have training. Just wanted to say, people remember who you were, not just who you became. She gave a respectful nod and rushed inside. Hale stood frozen, a warmth spreading through him that felt foreign. But good. Maybe he hadn't always been the villain of his story. Maybe he had simply lost his way. And maybe now, he was finding a new one. Later that night, Hale sat in his apartment, lights dim, cup of cheap instant coffee in his hands. But he wasn't drowning in regret anymore. He wasn't replaying the incident in endless loops. He wasn't stuck. He was thinking about the ground crew, about humility, about people he should have listened to, about people he could help now. He grabbed a notebook. Open to the first blank page. He wrote 3 words. Pilot. Fallen. Human. Then he started writing more stories from his career. Lessons he ignored. Mistakes he made. Moments he was proud of. Moments he wasn't. By the time he stopped, hours had passed. Pages were full. He didn't know why he wrote all of this, but he felt lighter after doing it. As he stared at the notebook, a thought hit him. Maybe my story isn't over. Maybe it's just different now. The next morning, Hale arrived at work early. Not for extra pay. Not because he had to. Because he wanted to. He found Aisha, and the crew gathered near the shuttle office. Morning, Hale said warmly. You guys need help with anything? They exchanged glances. We're okay, Richard. Aisha smiled. But thank you. No, really, Hale insisted. I want to help. She looked at him thoughtfully. You want to help? Or you want to feel better? Hale paused. A fair question. Both, he admitted. UH nodded in approval. Then you can start by helping us load these containers, said with a grin. Hale rolled up his sleeves, and for the first time in his life, manual labor didn't feel beneath him. It felt healing. Each bag he lifted felt like lifting a little weight off his chest. Each laugh with the crew felt like stitching a small tear in his soul. Each humble task felt like rebuilding the humanity he had lost. By noon, he was drenched in sweat, but he was smiling. Around lunchtime, the airport PA system suddenly echoed. Attention. All employees from the ground transportation unit, please report to conference room B. Ale wiped his hands on his uniform. Wonder what that's about, Aisha said. They walked together toward the conference room. Inside, supervisors, crew members, and some corporate staff were gathered. Hale stayed near the back. He didn't want to stand out. A woman from corporate relations stepped forward. Good afternoon, everyone, she began. We're here to recognize an employee who has gone above and beyond in teamwork, humility, and service. Hill glanced around. No one knew who she meant, she continued. This individual joined us during a difficult time. He came from a very different role, one with far more prestige, and instead of letting his past define him, he embraced his new responsibilities with grace and dedication. People murmured. The woman's eyes scanned the room, and though he made serious mistakes in his past, his growth since joining us has set an example of accountability and humanity. Hale frowned. No, surely not. The woman smiled. Please join me in recognizing Richard Hale for his exceptional conduct and positive impact on the team. The room froze, then applause, honest applause. Ooch slapped Hale on the back. Aisha clapped proudly. Supervisors nodded. Hale felt tears rise. He hadn't been applauded in a very long time. The woman handed him a small certificate. Nothing fancy. Not a pilot's award. Not federal recognition. Just a simple paper acknowledging that he had become a better man. For Hale, it meant more than any medal he ever earned. After the meeting, Hale stepped outside to catch his breath. He leaned on a railing overlooking the runways. A plane roared down the runway. Gears lifting, nose rising, ascending into the sky. He watched without envy. For once, he didn't miss the cockpit. He didn't miss the authority. He didn't miss the titles. He didn't miss the power. He missed something else entirely, the chance to be proud of himself. And for the first time in years, he finally was. He whispered to himself, I'm still flying. Just not the way I expected. And as the plane disappeared into the clouds, Richard Hale smiled softly, because he had finally learned that the most important flight isn't the one you take in the sky. It's the one you take inside yourself. The captain, who learned to land again 6 months passed, 6 months of shuttle routes, loading bags, helping lost travelers, sharing break room meals, and slowly stitching a broken life back together. Richard Hale wasn't rich. He wasn't respected by the public. He wasn't admired for medals or wings, but he was respected by the people who saw him every day. The people who mattered now. Ground crew, cleaners, drivers, supervisors, immigrant workers. People who once would have been invisible to him. Now they were his family. They didn't care about his fall. They cared about his effort. And that was new for Hale. A new kind of purpose. A new kind of pride, not pride from rank. Pride from humanity. One chilly morning, Hale was fueling the shuttle bus when his supervisor, Mark, approached him with a clipboard. Hale, Mark said. You got a minute? Richard nodded. What's up? Mark handed him a folded envelope. This came from corporate. Didn't say what it is? Said to hand it to you directly, Hale frowned. Corporate? They barely acknowledged his existence. He wiped his hands and opened the envelope. Inside was a letter official seal. Premium paper, formal header. His chest tightened. He read it once. Then again. Then a third time. He couldn't believe it, dear Mr. Hale. We are writing to inform you that Crown Atlantic Airlines is launching a new initiative focused on leadership reform, crew empathy training, and diversity competency. As part of this initiative, we are assembling a volunteer council of former pilots, crew members, and ground staff who have demonstrated exceptional personal growth. Your name was recommended by several employees. We would like to invite you to serve as an advisor in the Humanity and Aviation training program. This does not reinstate your license nor change your employment status, but your voice could help prevent future incidents. If interested, please attend the meeting below. With respect, Crown Atlantic Leadership Team. Hale lowered the letters slowly, for the first time since losing everything. Someone wanted to hear his voice. He felt dizzy with disbelief. Richard, Mark said gently, you okay? Hale took a shaky breath. I don't know what to say. Mark clapped a hand on his shoulder. Say yes. You earned this shot. Hale nodded slowly. Maybe he had. 3 days later, Hale walked into a conference building at JFK. It was the same kind of building where his career had ended. But today, it was offering him a beginning. Inside the meeting room, about 20 people sat in chairs facing a presentation board. Young pilots, veteran attendants, ground crew members, supervisors, they all turned when Hale walked in. Some recognized him instantly. Whispers spread. That's him. The captain from the news? I heard he changed a lot. It's the guy Uche always talks about. Hale's stomach tightened, but not from fear, from responsibility. He took a seat in the back. 2 minutes later, a senior HR director walked to the podium. Good morning, everyone, she began. We're here today to talk honestly about culture, bias, and leadership in aviation. She clicked a slide. A title appeared, Humanity and Aviation. Yeah. A new era for Crown Atlantic, then, she continued. We made mistakes. Our system made mistakes. Our leaders made mistakes. And most importantly, our culture allowed certain attitudes to grow unchecked. Hale swallowed. He knew she was talking about people like him. She scanned the room. We can't change the past, but we can change what comes next. Then she turned to Hale. Mr. Hale, would you come forward? Gasps, whispers. Eyes wide. Hale froze. Me. Yes, she said calmly. We want you to tell your story. Hale slowly stood, walked to the front, his palms sweaty. He looked at the faces staring at him. Some skeptical, some curious, some supportive. He took a breath. My name is Richard Hale, he began softly. I used to be a captain for Crown Atlantic. Silence. And I'm here because I lost everything. He paused. But more importantly, I lost myself long before that. No one moved. Holly continued. I want to tell you what pride does. What unchecked authority does. What bias does. Not in theory, but in real life. He told them everything. The lounge. The attitude. The assumptions. The humiliation. The hearing. The fall. The bus. The crew. The change. He didn't hide anything. He didn't sugarcoat anything. He spoke like a man who had learned to stop running from the truth when he finished. The room was silent. Then a young pilot raised his hand. Sir, he said softly. Thank you. Most people would have run from this. You walked into it. Another voice from a flight attendant in the front row. What you said? It will save careers. And maybe lives. Then a ground crew member chimed in. You're not the man you were. We see that. Hill felt his throat tighten. He wasn't expecting this. He was expecting cold judgment, suspicion, anger. But what he received instead was grace. Maybe not forgiveness, but grace. After the meeting, Hale stepped outside into the open air. The sky above was clear, bright blue, stretched wide. Warm sunlight breaking through. A plane soared overhead. He didn't look at it with longing, or bitterness, or pain. He just watched. Peacefully, he had learned something important today. He didn't need wings to lift people. He didn't need a cockpit to lead. He didn't need a title to matter. He finally understood the truth. He wasn't meant to fly again. He was meant to guide those who would. He was meant to prevent others from making the mistakes he once made. He was meant to land in a different part of the sky as he walked toward the shuttle depot. His phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. He opened it. "Good work today. J.H." Hale's eyes softened. Director Jamal Harrington had been there. Somewhere in the room, listening, watching, judging not the past, but the present. And that single message meant more than any certificate, any award, any title Hall had ever earned, because it meant one thing. Jamal had seen the change and believed it. Hale slipped the phone back into his pocket. He exhaled deeply. Then he walked toward his shuttle bus, toward the ground, toward the people, toward the life he was building. He wasn't a pilot anymore, but he was finally something better. A man who had learned how to land. The sky he finally understood. A full year had passed since the day Richard Hale's life fell apart. A full year since the lounge. Since the confrontation. Since the hearing. Since the public humiliation. Since the shutdown of his flying career. A full year since he met the man who would become both his undoing and his awakening, Director Jamal Harrington. In that year, Richard lost everything he thought made him powerful, but he gained everything he needed to become human. On a bright spring morning, Richard sat behind the wheel of his shuttle bus engine, humming sun pouring through the windshield. Radio playing softly, he was smiling. Not because life was perfect. Not because problems were gone. Not because he was rich, respected, or admired. He was smiling because he no longer needed any of that. He had purpose again. He had community again. He had dignity again. The kind of dignity that comes not from rank, not from uniforms, not from titles, but from character. As he finished his morning route, his phone buzzed. A message from Crown Atlantic Corporate. "Training session today, Humanity in Aviation. Room A201. Please arrive by 2 p.m. Richard nodded. He now volunteered twice a month as an instructor for new pilots and crew, not teaching them how to fly planes, but how to treat people, how to listen, how to lead, how to handle pressure without prejudice, how to remember humanity even when wearing a uniform. The lessons he wished someone had taught him before he ruined everything. He parked the shuttle, changed into a clean polo shirt, and walked into the training building inside. Young pilots chatted nervously, attendants straightened their ties, and ground crew trainees took notes. When Richard walked in, the room settled, not in fear, not in awe, in respect. Real respect. The training manager, Elena, greeted him warmly. "Glad you made it, Richard. We have a full class today, about 30 new hires." Richard nodded. "I'm ready." She smiled. "You always are." They walked together toward the front. Elena began. "Everyone, today's session is about leadership, empathy, and accountability. We're fortunate to have someone who lived through all of it, the failures and the growth." She looked at Richard. "Please welcome Richard Hale." Applause filled the room, soft, respectful, genuine. Richard stepped forward. He took a slow breath. "Good afternoon," he began. "My name is Richard Hale. I used to be a captain, and if my story had ended there, I wouldn't be standing in front of you today." The room leaned in. "I'm here because I learned the hard way that authority means nothing. If it's not grounded in humanity, you scan thee. Faces, you can fly perfectly. You can land perfectly. You can know every regulation." He paused. "But if you forget the human being in front of you, you've already failed." Silence. He continued. "I lost my wings because of my ego. Because of my assumptions. Because I thought the uniform made me better." He let the words hang heavy. It didn't. He told them the story. Not dramatically. Not defensively. Not heroically, honestly, when he finished. Several trainees had tears in their eyes. Richard closed with, "Remember this, you don't fly a plane with your hands. You fly it with your judgment. with your empathy, with your character, and if you ever forget that, he took a breath. You could become who I used to be. The room erupted into applause, not for his past, for his transformation. After the session, a young trainee approached Richard. "Sir," said softly, "my brother was once pulled off a flight for no reason. Your story? It meant a lot." Richard smiled gently. "I can't change the past," he said, "but maybe I can help make the future better." The trainee nodded, eyes shining. "You already are." As Richard headed toward the exit, Alina caught up with him. "You've become an important part of this program." "You know," she said. Richard chuckled. "That's ironic." "Not ironic," she corrected. "Meaningful." They stepped outside into the warm sunlight. "You should come tomorrow," Alina added. "We have a special guest speaking to senior leadership." "Who?" Richard asked. "You'll see." She winked and walked off. Richard raised an eyebrow, but he didn't push. The next day, Richard arrived early. The large conference room was set up like a stage podium, microphones, cameras. This wasn't a training, this was a major announcement. Crown Atlantic. Executives filled the rows, supervisors, captains, HR officials. Press representatives. Richard sat quietly in the back. Alina approached the podium. "Ladies and gentlemen," she announced, "today we present the new national standards for aviation conduct and accountability." She gestured toward the side door and to speak on behalf of the FAA. "Please welcome Director Jamal Harrington." Richard froze. The room erupted into applause. Jamal stepped forward, calm, collected, dignified as always. He began, "Today marks a shift in how we view authority in the skies. As pilots, attendants and crew, you are responsible not just for safety, but for dignity." He continued, "A year ago, an incident sparked national attention. It exposed the cracks in our cultural training and forced us to take a hard look at ourselves." Richard lowered his head. He knew exactly which incident. But then Jamal's voice shifted, however. "That incident also revealed something else." He paused. "People can change." The room murmured, and when they do, they deserve the chance to help others grow. Jamal's eyes swept the room, then landed directly on Richard. Richard's heart stopped. Jamal continued, "I'd like to acknowledge someone in this room who took responsibility for his actions, who faced consequences, who rebuilt himself from the ground." A wave of whispers spread. Jamal gestured. "Richard Hale, please stand." The entire room turned. Richard stood slowly, unsure, shaken, overwhelmed. Jamal continued, "Your journey has become a model for accountability, humility, and transformation. And it proves something important. Mistakes do not define us. How we rise after them does." People began to clap then. "Stand," a full standing ovation for the man once. "Disgraced," for the man who chose change, for the man who learned to land again. Richard's eyes filled with tears, not of shame, of gratitude. After the ceremony, Jamal approached him. "Richard," he said softly. "Director." Richard replied. Jamal smiled. "You can call me Jamal." Small silence passed. Not tense, not awkward, peaceful. Jamal extended his hand again. This time, he said, not as adversaries, but as partners in making aviation better. Richard took his hand, and this time it wasn't shaky. "I'd like that," Richard said. "Good," Jamal replied, "because we're just getting started." As the crowd dispersed, Richard stepped outside into the golden afternoon light. Planes soared overhead. He watched them, not with longing or regret or sadness, but with gratitude. He whispered to himself, "I may never fly again, but I finally understand the sky." He breathed in deeply, and for the first time in years, he felt whole.